without further ado, it's time for me to introduce my very special guest speaker tonight. And I actually got, so my speaker is Lynette Chanel, and I got Lynette to come and do a in-person session as a guest speaker at my women's health sessions at the Flourish Centre. She did that a couple of months ago. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't believe in chance meetings. There's some people that come into your life at perfect timing. They're supposed to be in there. And she is one of them, and I know that we're going to be running other things in the future. I can already feel it. There's some people you just know that you feel like you've met and you've known them for a long time. She's one of them. So I'm super excited that you guys are getting to have a chat with her that didn't get to come and see her in person. So the topic tonight is trauma healing as a sacred soul work. Pretty different than the normal topics that we get in here, and I think that's an awesome reason why I'm really excited about you guys hearing more about Lynette. She's also written a book, so I finished it within, I think it was 3 or 4 days of meeting her. So she came to the women's health sessions. I got her as a guest speaker. I just had this energy exchange that was going on with her. I haven't even really chatted about this since then either. So I just had to buy a book, and then I stayed up really late reading it. I was like suckered into this book, and I was blown away. And I think there's something about reading someone's book, their story, their life journey, that you're in awe of their vulnerability, I guess. They really expose themselves, and to share that, and so that we can feel safe to do that also. So I think that is really, really powerful. One of the reasons why I think I couldn't put the book down. So a bit about Lynette. Over 30 years ago, Lynette began a healing journey of her own to recover from some significant childhood trauma. Back then, there was nothing in the conventional system. And there was no real support or understanding for what she was going through. After having pretty dismal experiences with mainstream mental health services, on a side note, has that really changed much? She followed the promptings of her soul and took the alternative route. It became a profound spiritual journey and catalysing awakening, resulting in Lynette writing her autobiography, One More Breath, a struggle for self and soul. And she's also done courses for women where the deeper dimensions of their inner life could be explored. Lynette has been supporting others to heal for over 20 years. Her work is based on the understanding that we are multi-dimensional in nature, and that in order to truly heal, nourish and grow, we need to come to know, accept, understand and take responsibility for ourselves as the multifaceted beings that we are. Lynette Chanel is an author, certified self-healing coach, hypnotherapist, and NLP practitioner whose passion and area of expertise is trauma integration therapy, inner child healing, and family of origin work. I hope I covered everything. Welcome, Lynette. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you. I'm really thrilled to be here. Very excited. I feel quite privileged, actually.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I think when I met you, there was a very calm, sure of yourself sort of energy coming through. And it's interesting when I read the book, how I went through that journey with you. And I've read quite a few people's biographies over the last few years. And I just sit in awe that you can share that such private and intimate stuff with other people. But I think what it does is it, for me personally, reminds me to crack myself open and be more raw and vulnerable with other people, because it's that connection that us women really need to bond and share and know that our experiences they are personal, they are our own, but so many other women go through some similar experiences or experiences that remind us that, you know, we've all got our own stuff, our own story, our own trauma that we're living in. And sometimes we're carrying it very, very well all the way into our very adult age. So yeah, thank you for joining me. And how do you feel about writing a book and sharing with everybody your story? How does that feel? That's probably the biggest question I have. I have other questions, but I just want to know, how does it feel to write a book and I guess you birth a book and then share and know that people are going to know stuff about you?
Well, here's the thing with this book. I actually wrote this 18 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, the fact that I published it was a bit of a feat. And it took me a long time. I wrote it fairly easily, fairly quickly. All those years ago, I was actually doing community services, and I sat down one day at this really basic computer that I had and went to start an assignment, and before I knew it, I had a paragraph to a book on the page. And it was the strangest experience, because at the time I felt like there was this presence behind me, like I was being supported. I just went with the feeling, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I just showed up every day, and the book basically wrote itself. In that first draft, it was quite a bit different to how it ended up being. But it took me a little while to then get the courage to put that into somebody's hands.
Yeah.
And let them have a look at it and be an assessor of what I'd written and whether it was any good or not. And that was terrifying. Like, that was just beyond terrifying, because of the nature of my history and the way that I'd been taught to think about myself. I had to really overcome my greatest fear, which was that I was going to find out that I'm stupid or not good enough, or, you know, I could always hear my dad's voice like a worm in my ear. So that was one hurdle. And then going through the polishing process and, you know, a few iterations of the book to get it to where it needed to be. And then, you know, for years, also having to it was okay that I wrote the book, but I had more work to do on myself before I could get to a place where I could put it out there, you know, family stuff.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So it took a long time, and really interesting. My greatest fear was around my father. And I mean, if you read the book, then you'd understand why. He was a force, and I was terrified of him. But this is a thing that happens with victims of child abuse too. There's something really weird that happens, that we get lured into family secrets and this thing about protecting the abusers. It gets all very messed up, and I wanted to protect my dad, strangely, and but I also had, my grandparents were still alive at the time, and, you know, I basically had to wait for them to pass. But this was all the programming. This is all the, you know, the trauma stuff, that this toxic loyalty that we have to family that prevents us from healing.
Yeah.
You know, I've had clients that have, you know, they've been on the table and they'll come to the edge of something, but if it's about a parent and there's that toxic loyalty there, that need to protect, they just you'll shut it down. We need to be really aware of that. But with my family, it took a long time. And in the end, after holding on to it for years, I was out walking one day and I just got this nudge, and I just went, oh my God, I've got to give the manuscript to my dad to read.
Wow.
And it was my biggest fear, but not doing it was holding me prisoner too. So I'm kind of like looking up at the sky, trying to saying to spirit, whatever you want to call that, really? Really? I have to do that? Really? And it was so strong, like I just knew that I had to do it.
Mm.
And I also knew that it wasn't about me. It was actually for him.
Mm.
So I just had to let go of it. And I gave him the manuscript and he read it.
How did he take it?
Not very well. Not very well. But I want to say that it didn't change anything in our relationship. I didn't get any apology. I mean, that was never going to happen. My dad, you know, no, never going to happen. But what I understood when I got that message that day when I was walking, that I had to give the manuscript for him to read, that it had something to do with his soul. It had something to do with him at a deeper level. Mm-hmm. And I just had to trust that. Mm-hmm. So, but my dad, he would ridicule, he would, I mean, he really went after me. And there was nothing I could ever do that was good. And yet, after he passed, my mum gave me the manuscript back. And my dad had very carefully taken that manuscript that wasn't bound. It was just all the loose pages in a file. And he'd very carefully put them in sleeves in a file and had it all, it was like done with care.
Wow.
So it was done with respect.
Yeah.
But he could never and would never say anything to me. He couldn't face himself. And, you know, I knew when I got that file back that it was so carefully put together. I just thought, wow, you know, I think he respected the work. He respected what I'd done. Yeah.
I'm just having some internet issues. So can you all let me know if you can see us okay? Sorry, I know we're trying to talk, but I'm just a bit worried that you're not seeing it on my end. If you guys can pop comments in there if it's failing. Oh, thanks, Deb. We can see in here. Okay, must be just my end. That's interesting. I didn't know that you'd given the well, I must have not noticed you gave the book to your dad. That would be very big. Do you feel that writing the book is part of the healing as well, though? I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Being raw and vulnerable is part of healing from trauma, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, but for me, I mean, I guess everybody's got a different experience. If they write something like this, they might have a different experience. We're all different.
Yeah.
But for me, it integrated me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still had a lot of healing to do. I went on and messed up big after I wrote that. You know, I still had a lot of trauma to heal from.
Mm.
So, you know, while the book ends with, you know, yay, I'm okay, I've discovered I'm okay, your central nervous system is still wired with, you know, I had complex PTSD and suffered from depression. So, I mean, that doesn't magically go away, but we're on this journey that's evolutionary. You know, you're a work in progress. Yeah, it's organic, and I wish there was a quick fix, but there isn't.
Yeah.
It's one hell of a journey.
Oh,
But the book, when I first set out to write it, I mean, I wrote it fairly well. It was rudimentary. I had a lot of purple prose, I was told, which is a no-no as a writer.
what is
So
that
I
about?
had a lot of learning to do.
What's that?
Purple prose is where you use really flowery, overly poetic language, and it's very emotive. And
Okay.
so I learned a lot about writing. This is the
Yeah.
first book I'd ever written, and my manuscript assessor, who went on to become my mentor, she really helped me a lot with that and helped me polish the book and craft my skill as a novice, a beginner writer.
Mm.
And but what it did, not in the first draft, but when I had to go back and do the restructuring process and fill in gaps, and the more I was working on the book, the more information I was putting in there and changing things around. It's basically, long story short, what it did was take me as a very fractured person internally. I never had any internal structure because the trauma was pretty significant. The book had me really work hard to try and chronologically put things in order. So the whole process was very restructuring. It's hard to put into it. It's like a built scaffolding that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was. I highly recommend it. In fact, next year I'm going to be running workshops for people who want to write themselves well, who want to use the medium of writing.
Oh, wow. That's a
To
great.
get out. I've always wanted to do it, and I hadn't gotten around to it. Maybe it wasn't the right time, but it just feels like the right time to be.
I mean, that's something I do with my clients. I'm always encouraging them to journal, because once we start getting the thoughts out of our head onto paper,
Yeah,
so therapeutic, and then we start to unlock some of the stuff that's kind of buried in there quite deep as well. So
definitely.
Just on something you said earlier, because this kind of resonates with me in my own childhood, is that we can look for an apology from a parent for certain events or experiences that we had in our childhood. And when we don't receive that, or we know that we realize we're not going to receive that, there can be some bitterness and resentment towards that parent.
Yeah.
And I think if it's strong trauma, if it's deep trauma, it's never going to come out as an apology anyway, or it's any form of sort of acceptance of the situation or what's happened. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when I was younger, I really wanted and tried really hard to get some kind of connection between me and my dad. I really wanted him to love me. I really wanted him to love me. I really wanted him to see me, and I needed to have that. But as I grew and as I healed, I came to understand that it wasn't a requirement for me to heal. And over the years, with the continued learning, my own evolution, I came to understand that he wasn't capable of it either.
Yeah.
Because of his own trauma, his own wounding. Where it's not possible to have that kind of healing conversation or acknowledgement from a parent, we need to know that we don't actually need it. Yeah. We don't have to have it in order to heal. In fact, I got way over that to being able to forgive my dad and to even say that, you know, that I loved him. And he did some really bad stuff. And somebody said to me once, well, actually a couple of people did, that read the early draft, because I'd put at the end of the book, you know, I can't remember exactly what I said about, you know, after he'd passed away, he died of cancer or complications to cancer. And I had said, you know, I love you, Dad. And I hope that you landed into the arms of love, or landed into the arms of peace, you know, on the other side, something like that. And a couple of people said to me, do you really want to put that at the end in a book like that? Because some people aren't going to understand it. How can you even say that? And I'm like, but that's the ultimate goal on a healing journey, is to be able to get to a point where you have such insight and understanding about the recipe that went into what happened to you. You know, I did a lot of work around my dad's childhood, and knowing stuff about my mum's background, and but that doesn't mean that
so you can understand their behavior, right? So
I mean, it all makes sense to me. It all makes perfect sense. Did that make everything go away? No, because you know, it's cellular, all this buried stuff. You intellectually, you can have the understanding, and you can, you know, it can all make sense, and you rationalize it. Or I mean, I really did end up with a lot of compassion for my dad, but I had still received those traumas. So that is, then I'm still left with the work to do to get that stuff out of my system. You know, but it's been an incredible experience. I
think it's a huge weight off your shoulders as well. I went through an experience personally with my mother, where I think a lot of my teenage years and my 20s, I wanted an apology, and from that there was just so much anger and resentment that was building up inside, and so that would come out in behavior. And it was only probably the last, I think, just less than 10 years that I had worked on it and really understood it. And it was I think for me was I let go of the trauma, and I had worked through the trauma, but it was actually a situation I was in with some personal development courses I did last year. And one of the things that comes up is just realizing that if I hadn't have experienced those things, I wouldn't have experienced and done the things I've done, and I wouldn't be who I am. And that is where my forgiveness came. So I had dealt with my trauma, but that I wasn't sitting in any forgiveness, and I wasn't sitting in anger anymore either, but there wasn't the forgiveness. And I think for me, the last year was really like the last sort of, and I think you are always working on yourself. You're always growing, hopefully. But for me personally, my for me to in my trauma journey was that forgiveness is what really was that last bit of releasing, to understand that if the things that happened to me, my own personal trauma, if I hadn't have experienced them, I definitely wouldn't be the mum I am now, and I wouldn't be the wife I am, and I wouldn't be the nutrition coach I am, the friend I am. And also realizing when I was reading your book that we carry these stories in our heads for such a long time, and all it's doing is just stopping us from holding us back. And it's that forgiveness, I guess, that is that final, I guess, part of the really letting go and being okay with it, and knowing that it's really shaped who we are, and that
Yeah.
means we get to show up. I feel like the best healers in the world are the ones that have had, you know, the hardest childhoods.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, we know what it feels like to struggle or to experience things, and so we can show up for other people in such an empathetic way and a non-judgmental way. We want people to experience the best they can and live their best lives without their old stories running in their heads. And you know, I think it's pretty amazing, pretty powerful. And from understanding that, you've only got forgiveness of your own experiences, because they're actually what shaped us into who we are.
Yeah. Forgiveness is a really interesting thing, and it's a hard one for a lot of people. And we're all different, and depending on what the programs are you've got running in your head, depending on the degree of trauma, because the thing with complex trauma is it's you know, layer on layer on layer on layer, and if it's been through the formative years, then your personality and everything is built through that. So like I say, it's different for everybody, all the messaging that you get in. And one of the big things that was in my upbringing, not just the trauma experiences directly, but also the impact of the way that I was taught about religion, Catholic, fire and brimstone variety, that did a hell of a lot of damage. And so the messaging that about being a good girl was really deep for me. And so and all the messaging about forgiveness was the wrong kind of forgiveness. And so that's kept me stuck for a really long time. But it's funny, because of all of my programming and the way that it worked in my brain, I was able to forgive my abusers. You know, there was my uncle and you know, stuff like that. The hardest person for me to forgive ultimately was myself. That was the hardest thing. And and that's only been recent that I've been able to really fully do that, because the truth is, because of the level of trauma that I had and the impact it had on my brain and all that stuff, I passed on trauma to my kids. You know, so, and I know I did, and I impacted them because I was not able to be fully present emotionally as a mum. I had you know, I had a lot of fear about life. I was terrified of life. I was terrified of authority. I was terrified of a lot of things. And because my central nervous system was so shot, I couldn't deal with a lot of stress. I couldn't deal with noise. So I did it as hard as I tried, and I tried. I did impact my kids, and I know that, and that has been the hardest thing for me to be able to reconcile in myself. And I'm just so deeply grateful and so blown away that my kids, they get it, you know, they understand, and they don't have the issue that I have with myself, or have had with myself, around having to let that go.
Yeah.
You know, so it's this cycle that we can get in. And I've been on an amazing journey with my daughter, and she's, you know, she herself has become a brilliant coach and a healer and kinesiologist, and I just marvel at her. Like, I'm so lucky. Like, I used to think that I broke my kids. I didn't break anything.
Yeah, I get that.
You know, and my boys, all my kids are in my life, and I'm really lucky. Like, I'm really lucky.
I think our kids teach us. I think that
I learned so much from my kids.
So do I. Still do.
Yeah. Yeah,
They're my biggest teachers, and
but they are.
they
They
teach us
actually
how
are.
to
We've
love
got things
ourselves
so
better.
screwed up,
Yeah, yeah,
the
and
way we look at that. You know, this, I call it, you know, it's adult narcissism. There's so many ways our world is structured, and the way that we view who we are as adults. It's like we're it, you know. Once you've hit adulthood, we're it, and it's just couldn't be more further from the truth.
yeah,
So the next generation, they really do take us to task on all of the places where we're shut down, all of the places where we've got stuck wounding, all of the dark bits that we don't want to see. It all comes out. And I have this analogy that I use with kids when they come into the world with babies. You know how beautiful they are, and they're all so delicate and innocent, and they're just so yummy, you know. But when they're born, they've got an invisible stick behind their back. You got no idea what's coming, because that invisible stick comes out, and it'll poke you here and it'll poke you there, and that's their gift. I think this invisible stick is that it will trigger and bring up stuff for you that you need to be able to heal and resolve. You know, it's not all about us.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So can you tell me a bit more about how you do trauma work with is it men and women, or just women?
Mostly I work with women, but I do have some male clients. I don't go out of my way to work with men because I don't feel I'm qualified. It was never really my interest. My area of interest has always been supporting women to heal and evolve, and particularly people that have had, I mean, we really need to be clear. What I think what gets people stuck sometimes when they think they don't have any trauma.
Oh yeah,
You know, that's,
I see that.
nah, we all have it. We all have trauma.
What's her
It's the
name?
types of trauma.
Yeah, that's right. Dr. Nicole, the holistic psychologist.
Yeah.
She's written many books, and I think she's quite well known. She says there's nobody that hasn't got trauma.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cellular. It's when you understand the nature of consciousness and quantum physics, human history, it's all here, and so much is going on with us. Unless you actually understand that stuff, or you've got some insight into that, we don't understand why we feel to the depth of the way we do about certain things, or it's all in there. But you don't have to have, like in my case, the childhood abuse history that I did, to say that you're traumatized. There are so many subtle ways that because this is the other thing that people don't really understand, is how delicate childhood is. It really is. And babies that come in, where they're such ethereal creatures at that time, and so fragile, so open, like sponges. We don't greet babies in the world the way that we should, because we've got things back to front. You know, when a baby first comes in, where we should be like, oh my God, who has just entered in? And curiosity about who that soul is, what their gifts and talents are, what they're here to be, their creativity. And we don't wait for them to show us who they are. We get about the business of telling them who they are, molding them and shaping them and making them fit into a rigid system. And you know, it's a tragedy, because a lot of people don't ever get to really experience the fullness of who they actually are. We lock all our gifts away, we lock all our talents away, we lock our creativity away, because if it's not allowed to be there, that's what happens. Right? So
yeah,
I got off track there. I can't
yeah,
remember.
it's all right. That's fine. I get off track.
I get really passionate about this. It's
yeah. Maria's just said she writes stories for healing books, and your classes sound amazing.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, you got quite a few people just putting love hearts and comments in the comments, so they're listening. So what I find is that we're very good, very skilled at pushing our trauma down inside. So when you work with clients, and I think that from what I've personal experience and what I experience with my clients, is there is a fear of dealing with it, right?
Yeah.
So how do you deal with clients so that they are, you know, and I know you wrote about this in your book too, of your own experience, being ready to go down that path or that journey, or what is it, unlocking the stuff that's buried? Yeah.
I think firstly we have to trust our body's own intelligence. You know, it's got a wisdom beyond our control, really. You know, I mean, the reverse has happened too, where clients have come in and said to me, right, I want to get in there, I want to get it done, and I want to get out. And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. The same with somebody who comes in and they've got a lot of fear around it. That's a block right there. That's just like a big brick wall. People that are experiencing have real fear, and I totally understand that, about opening up this stuff. Gently. It really is gently, and allowing space and giving yourself time to get to know the person that you're working with. Just to have, if you approach a practitioner or a coach or whatever, it's just acknowledging that fear and allowing it to be present and working with the fear. The way that I do it is through the body. So we would engage with the fear and let the fear speak, because it's there for a reason. It's absolutely there for a reason, and it's okay for it to be here, and it's okay for fear to take as long as it needs to take to be able to let those walls down. And that's gently. Some people are really delicate, and they just need, that's the nurturance, the love and the care that they didn't get when they were little. You know, so it's just creating that safety. And then you've got to, you know, fear can play games with you too, because we have, at our conscious level, which is only 5% of our awareness, our conscious mind is only 5% of our awareness. So the reality is we're all walking around in our day-to-day thinking we know everything, and at a conscious level we've probably made up our mind about what's going on inside of us, and we think we know ourselves and all of that. Well, the reality is that it's just 5%. So the 95 is underneath, that's submerged into the deeper part of the unconscious mind, and that's leveled and layered. So you think you know what's going on, and you might come in and you might say, well, this is what I believe, or this is what I think, or you might come in complete denial about something, but the body knows differently. And, you know, when I used to do massage years ago, I'd have somebody on the table and I'm working on their body and they'd be verbally telling me something and I'm like listening into them, their body's going, nah, this is actually what's going on. So the body has that wisdom of its own. Your higher, I mean, you can call it your higher self if you want. Just trusting that to be the guide and trusting the sensations in your body, trusting the feelings in the body, and we follow that. So when we're working together, we really engage all of you, and it's the client that is always in control. I'm not doing anything to anybody.
Yeah.
I'm not it. You are. It's all here for you. And it's learning to trust that and just tap into that. So I hope that answered the question adequately.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Because we're getting close to the end, and I would love people to pop some questions in the comments, and Lynette can answer them for you. So I know we've
happy to
over time, but it's good to have a chat too. So if anyone's got questions, please pop them in the comments and I'll read them out. Do you feel that it's some of our, do you feel that our lacking in our self-worth is what really stops us from dealing with our trauma?
Yeah. In fact, my understanding now is that there's, I would say, doesn't happen, but there's people, most people have got a level of self-hatred.
Yes,
we do. That's you know, I mean, you look at the inner life of women, we are our worst critics.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When we look in the mirror, I mean, I remember when I was younger and I used to look pretty good. I was, you know, there was a time there when I was okay. I wasn't carrying the extra weight and I wasn't, but if I looked in the mirror, I couldn't see that. I saw all the ugliness that I was taught to see, all the ugliness I was taught to believe about myself.
And that was before we had social media.
Yeah.
What our kids are dealing with.
Yeah, but beyond that, there's a wound in the human being that is ancient. It's been there for, and this gets back to that quantum physics stuff and the cellular memory in our DNA. We've been taught to believe that we're bad. We've been taught to believe that we're not good, and religion and the Catholic Church, well, all religions really, those sort of Abrahamic religions have taught us that we are born in sin and all of that stuff. That's been around for centuries. When you understand that we are all one at that consciousness level, we've all got a dose of that. We've got that memory, and so it's existent, I think, for everybody. We've just really, really buried it. And it's deep in the unconscious mind, so that, you know, I remember when I was young, after my daughter was born, her name is Holly, by the way, she's watching tonight. I remember after she was born, and this is what I mean by that invisible stick. I mean, you would have read it in the book. She triggered a lot of repressed stuff for me.
Yeah, daughters. Yeah.
And then, I had to go on that journey to really unpack that. But I honestly believed when I first started to enter into trying to get support for myself, and it was mainstream because that's all there was, I just had these crippling beliefs that there's people out there that are worse off than me. I didn't have it that bad. You know, we tell ourselves all this stuff based on,
Yeah.
directly, that's our low self-esteem, our lack of self-worth, but it's also programming. It's programming and conditioning,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and not only will it prevent us from entering into a healing process, but it holds us back in who we came here to be.
Mm.
You know, that full expression of I'm here, and, you know, excitement about being alive, and excitement about, wow, what can I do? What am I going to do with my life? You know, the nature of the world we live in and the way it's been constructed is that gets killed off pretty early.
Yeah.
And we have an epidemic of anxiety, depression. I mean, for women, for heaven's sake, the use of antidepressants and medications is just, it's huge.
Yeah,
because of the suppression of who we really are, because of all that programming. And, you know,
I think from everybody I sort of deal with, I feel like self-worth is just such an issue. And, you know, I'm a nutrition and mindset coach, and I have to do self-worth work with my clients because most of our eating challenges are based around our self-worth. You know,
absolutely,
we compare ourselves to others, or we have an idea of who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to show up. And like you said, a lot of that does come from our programming of through schools and friends and experiences and childhood, parents and all that sort of stuff. And I think the more we work on ourselves and work on our growth and build our self-worth, the more we're ready to shine more of ourselves, and are ready to up level ourselves. And that's what I get excited about when I meet people like that, you know. And I can imagine it being scary because I can resonate with it, because I actually remember that teetering moment for myself. Do I go to that next level? Do I go to that next step? I was so scared to deal with my trauma, and it wasn't until I'd actually started doing the self-worth work that I was ready to deal with mine. And I also think it is etched in every area of our lives. The way we show up with our kids as parents is based on our worth, and the way you see women treat each other. You know, you get women out there that you think are a very great friend, or, you know, this bestie you've had for years, and then find out that relationship isn't what you thought it was. And you can't even get upset with that person because it's based on their insecurities and their fears and their traumas and their stories. Just so many different areas like that I see from the self-worth angle or the way we view ourselves is, you know, just really affecting how we're living. And I think that when we do the work, we can prepare ourselves and get ourselves ready and get our mind ready to open up and unlock all these things we have buried, so we can show up as our best self, so we can work through trauma, so we can eat healthy, so we can choose to do the things that really light us up. And I know it sounds like a simple thing, and it's a lot of work to work on yourself and that, but yeah, it's making that decision to want more for your life. I think is one of the biggest steps as well to take.
There's a lot that, I mean, where we are now globally, and you look at what's happening in the world at the moment, women are really needed. Women are really, really needed. Our role here on this planet is just so important. We don't remember who we are. We don't remember, we don't remember so much of what is intrinsic and innate about being a woman. The natural woman, not the conditioned woman. I mean, this is a huge another subject altogether, and there's a lot to talk about around all of this stuff, a lot to relearn, and women need to learn to trust each other again. There's this programming and conditioning is not just in relation to our childhood. It goes way beyond that. It goes way beyond that. And when you look at human history, and you look at the impact of the systems that you know, multi-generationally women as a collective have been kind of entrapped in, it makes perfect sense then why women have such a hard time trusting each other. If we're not connected to ourselves and we're not connected to our natural womanhood, our natural self, we're living as a caricature. That's really quite, it's so sad, because you're talking about friendships, and you can be friends with somebody. I've had this experience, someone for 10, 11, 12 years, and then all of a sudden one day something happens and they turn on you. Or some event happens between the two of you, and then you realize, oh my God, I didn't really know that person at all. Because you're in a relationship with a caricature. We've all got these caricature aspects because that's our programming, that's our conditioning, multi-generational. We learn it from our mothers. Our mothers were essentially caricatures, wounded. And so, you know, when you in your formative years, when you're receiving all of that wounding, your authentic, innate self, your natural self, no, this is not a good place to be. It's from the passed on conditioning and all of that sort of stuff, that programming comes in, and you go, okay, well, that part of me is not okay, put that away. Oh, that part of me is not okay, I'll put that away. And when you put parts of yourself away, nature abhors a vacuum. You've got to have a replacement. We're ingenious like that. We do it unconsciously. It's our higher intelligence. We have to survive. We've got to continue to grow up. We're still alive, still in a body. So we go and create these caricature parts. So it's really interesting. You might, you know, when you're in friendships and in relationship with people, it's like, well, who are they? Am I relating to the real person or to the caricature?
I run retreats, I think, you know, a few times a year, and majority of women come and they don't know each other, so they're meeting for the first time. And obviously I've been doing it for 6 years. I think I'm getting a lot better at them. And what I'm noticing is that women are prepared to be vulnerable with strangers and have conversations with strangers than they do with their family or friends. And you know, especially the last few retreats, what I'm noticing is that they're bursting to let it out. It's sitting inside so heavy, and I think that it's having that, I guess, that lack of support or feeling of trust that's there. And luckily enough, you know, they're, you know, having retreats for people, not just me, but other people holding retreats, so that women can go to that and, I mean, have massive breakthroughs, and it might be enough for them, or it might be the start of a journey of more and more, you know, peeling back the layers of realizing that life can be a lot better, a lot more fun, and you can be vulnerable, and you can share with other women, and they can be super supportive even if they don't know you. And I think that's really cool. And it's people like you and I and other people that are in this group, that it's important that we keep sharing with others and creating these spaces so that women can come to them and share. And and just, yeah, it helps with the process of the growing, of the, you know, undoing of those who we're supposed to be, thoughts, and yeah, continually working on ourselves, and acknowledging and having that awareness around the trauma as well, that we can then go to the next stage of seeing somebody that, like you, who has not only the qualifications, but actually such a deep level of understanding and experiencing, that, you know, can take people to that journey, and to that letting go, and understanding, I guess, of where they're at and where they should be, or not should, I guess.
There's one thing I want to say about that though too, is that, you know, when you start a journey, there is no end date.
Yeah.
Like, I've started here, I'm going to end up there, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
Doesn't work like that at all. I found that out. And you know, there's all these layers. I mean, there's so much in us for us to be able to unpack. I say transmute, but it's our consciousness that's growing. So I always say that don't just stop at your childhood. You know, there's so much more in you. You're part of the human family with human history, memory, but you've also, we all come in with our consciousness, and it's our consciousness that's growing and expanding. Like, if I go back to thinking and remembering how I was when I first started to where I am now, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so full of my consciousness, and my awareness has just gone from, it used to be like this, you know, all tight, just to this, just so expanded with knowledge, with wisdom, knowledge, awareness, and all of that sort of stuff. That doesn't mean that I am still not on the healing path, because I most certainly am. But that's what we're here for, is to evolve and grow. And for every person that gets on the journey and does their work, they are giving not only themselves, but their bloodline and the whole human family the greatest gift.
Yeah.
It really does make a difference. It's that old ripple effect analogy. Yeah, it's extraordinary. I would never. God, there's so much we went through. Me and my kids, just going through all of the aftermath of my trauma, family breakdown, my marriage ended. But I've got to say, I mean, looking back, it's like you said at the start, you know, you wouldn't be the person you are without it. I would not know what I know without it. I wouldn't have. There's been times in the past where I've pretty much fallen on my knees in front of life with a capital L. That's what that's the big life. I'm just going, oh my God, thank you. Like, I get all these downloads and understandings, and I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't have done that. I couldn't. So I'm grateful. I'm kind of grateful.
Yeah. It's really good when you get to that too, isn't it? It's just such a lightness, and that's how you able to share with other people as well. We've got lots of comments coming up, even though we've gone majorly over time. Everyone's still on, so they must be listening. So I've got, Deb has said, so true. Katie said, Queen. She said, yes, I noticed that a few said they didn't want their friends there. Such a beautiful, yes, I think she's talking about the retreat.
Yeah.
Said such a beautiful conversation. And Katie said, I felt that like that in Invictus. I didn't want to know anyone there. Turns out I did, but wanted it to be strangers.
Oh, I did Invictus as well. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need to have more opportunities to be vulnerable and to share more of ourselves, to unlock and let go, work through and let go some of the stuff we're walking around with. And what I think is the biggest thing is that you get excited about life. The more you do it, the more you get excited about life, and you jump out of bed feeling really great, and you don't realize how much you're carrying on your back until you're not carrying it so much.
And that's right.
Yeah. And I do think it's a daily process. We're not perfect, and it is I think we're forever. If you want to be enjoy life, you have to want to always be improving yourself and working towards it. So Maria said it's 11:07. I got to go rest. I'm so sorry we've stayed on so long. We don't usually do chats this long. We'll close it up now. Do you know what, Lynette? I have been doing these lives every Tuesday since I think it's March of this year. And I always ask my question at the start, and I forgot. I was so busy doing your big intro, and I forgot to ask you your first.
My favourite thing to eat.
What's your favourite thing to eat?
I was waiting for that question and it didn't come. And
I've never forgotten in all months, like nearly the whole year, and I've never forgotten. What's your favourite thing to eat?
My favourite thing is just doing a stir fry.
Yeah,
I liked.
You're vegetarian, aren't you? You like.
Well, I was vegan, and then I decided to become vegetarian. So I think I'm a flexitarian.
I love it. I think it's good to not have anything that you're stuck to. It's good to have you're open to.
I rarely have meat.
Yeah.
I rarely have meat, but I really I don't want to eat it at all. But I must confess that I've had a bit of chicken on and off. Not very often, but I've done it. And sometimes, sorry?
You eat fish?
No. My preference is to go back to being fully vegan. It's like I need to give up coffee, and I haven't. I'll do it for 3 months, and then I'll be having coffee. I love my coffee. I don't really want to give it up.
Yeah, like.
But my favourite thing to eat is a stir fry, and I actually watched one of your recipes that you were doing on your Women's Health Sessions page, and I saw you stir frying some big chunky piece of capsicum and some different vegetables, and you were using sesame oil.
Yes.
And so now I use sesame oil I love it in most of because I was using coconut oil.
Yeah. If you get
olive oil,
there's a sesame oil. Not all sesame oils are created equal. If you want to try one that's absolutely amazing, I'll put it in the comments, the brand or picture of the one I use. It's a toasted sesame oil. It's organic, and it's just beautiful. It's just the nicest taste. It's not cheap, but it is like, yeah, my husband's obsessed with it, so I have to keep an eye on how much he's using. But it's good, isn't it? It gives it such your different flavor.
I love it. And it looks so delicious what you were making in that fry pan for that particular.
I wonder what it was. Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah,
it was good. But I started intermittent fasting, well, a little while back now, and it was a dismal failure.
There's a video on here I've done on a Tuesday night, if you want to go through the videos, and I talk about intermittent fasting.
Yeah,
just all.
But I'm going to go on a cleanse. I've just got a Anthony Williams, the medical medium, his book on Cleanse to Heal, and it's got because I have some autoimmune problems, and that was actually from the hepatitis B jab, just saying. So I'm going to go on that cleanse, and I really need to do it. So I will be starting that Yeah, probably. I mean, what I've put myself on a time limit. I'll be doing it, I think, probably from Monday.
Okay. Well, I'll have to check in with you and see how you go. I'm
Yeah,
not doing it
it's got to be done.
for Christmas. I run cleanses in January. So if you want to.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a nice gentle cleanse as well. All right, I better wrap up because we've been chatting for an hour and 10 minutes and
Oh, wow.
30-minute chats. But everyone stayed online, so I've kept going.
Thank you, guys. Very grateful.
So thank you so much for chatting with me tonight. It's been a really good session. I don't know if you're interested in hopping on here again next year. We can do.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And yeah, feel like there's lots that we can talk about, and maybe some of the women can come up with some more topics for next year. I'm looking at how we can cover a lot more different areas of women, but maybe just getting into a bit of the deeper stuff like we have tonight. It seems to.
Yeah. Well, it's the time.
I think it is too.
Yeah.
So do I. All right. Well, good night, everybody. Thank you so much for
good night, everyone.
And listening. And Lynette's details are going to be posted in the comments. So if you want to check her out or contact her about what she does, please reach out in the comments, have a look and connect with her. And I'm not sure if you want to put details for your book in the comments as well, Lynette. Yeah, people might want to be grabbing hold of that.
It's great. On all the online bookstores, you know, Amazon and Book Depository and all of that.
Yeah, awesome. There you go.
I'll do that in the comments.
Yes. This is the book.
Yeah.
All right. Good night. Enjoy the last bit of your Tuesday night, and I will see you all next Tuesday night. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.